My darling, I will not tell you what I suffered today. Your grief is great enough already. The looks of scorn they cast upon me. There is a traitor, but it is not I.
Alfred Dreyfus was accused of high treason in 1894. His case unleashed a storm in France that set the country at war with itself. In a wave of public hysteria that threatened to engulf the powers of reason, the Dreyfus affair rocked the very foundations of the French Republic and echoed throughout the world. Alfred Dreyfus was born in 1859 in the town of Mulhouse in the province of Alsace. He was the son of a financially successful assimilated Jewish family. At the age of 12, he witnessed the triumphant march of German soldiers occupying Alsace-Lorraine after the disastrous defeat of France in the Franco-Prussian War. Young Dreyfus resolved to become a soldier and to devote his life to uphold the honor of France. At the age of 31, he graduated from the Ecole de Guerre with honors. Dreyfus was promoted and became the first Jewish officer on the General Staff at the Ministry of War. His appointment affirmed Napoleon's emancipation policy, granting French Jews full and equal rights as citizens. At the age of 35, he wrote,
"Life smiles upon me. A brilliant career in the army lies before me. My wife and 2 children make my home a happy place."
However, only months later, in October 1894, Captain Alfred Dreyfus was charged with passing military secrets to Colonel Max von Schwarzkoppen, the German military attaché in Paris. Alfred Dreyfus was the perfect suspect. He had access to the information. His handwriting was similar to the handwriting on the bordereau, as the document came to be known. He was from Alsace, and he was a Jew. The court-martial was held in a closed session. A secret dossier was brought in to sway the judges. It was a forgery. Dreyfus was pronounced guilty. He was condemned to public degradation and exiled to Devil's Island for life. In a wave of popular hysteria, the Jew was used as a scapegoat with which to attack the new, more democratic Third Republic. Political and church leaders and the press rose against Dreyfus and Jews in general. Although the Jews of France made up less than 2% of the population, they faced growing antagonism. Edouard Drumont, editor of La Libre Parole, became a leader of the anti-Dreyfusards. Drumont targeted Jews serving France in civic, military, and professional fields, and proudly called himself the Pope of anti-Semitism. Drumont claimed vagabonds and peddlers were invading France.
The land is being polluted. France for the French. To be French is to be Catholic.
The Dreyfus affair fueled burgeoning anti-Semitic political parties seeking to express discontent with the new republic. Widely held anti-Semitic beliefs were fanned by propaganda in an attempt to win votes. Anti-Semites acquired a political platform and ran for legislative seats. Posters proclaimed that it was not a question of religion, but a question of race, and urged people to use their vote to cleanse France. The incarceration of Dreyfus on Devil's Island, off the coast of South America, was condemnation to a slow death. Conditions in this isolated and torrid place were inhumane. Surrounded by a high-walled enclosure, with a bare light over his head, prey to vermin and scorpions, Dreyfus was shackled for extended periods of time.
My darling, I am dazed by my suffering, caged up in this hut. I see only the guards. No one speaks to me. The heat is unbearable. I am racked with fever, and a plague of insects run over my skin. Forgive my weakness. We must have courage. Upon you depends my honor, and our family's honor. We must continue on to our goal to bring the truth to light.
In contrast to the reality of his imprisonment, some newspapers presented distorted images of Dreyfus on Devil's Island, dining on foie gras and champagne, while Frenchmen died for their country. Throughout his torment, Dreyfus maintained an unflinching loyalty to the French judicial system, a belief in the honor of the army, and a devotion to his family. At home in France, Alfred's wife, Lucy, and his brother, Mathieu, tirelessly fought for a retrial, enlisting the support of a handful of prominent intellectuals who became known as the Dreyfusards in their stalwart fight against their nation's gross miscarriage of justice. Among them was Georges Clemenceau, editor of L'Aurore, an influential political daily, who wrote powerful articles supporting the innocence of Dreyfus. Despite their efforts, it seemed that France had forgotten Dreyfus. Help came from an unlikely source. Lieutenant Colonel Georges Picquart, the newly appointed Chief of Intelligence in the War Ministry. Picquart uncovered evidence which revealed that Major Ferdinand Walsin Esterhazy, a Hungarian with German connections, was the traitor. When Picquart brought the matter to his superiors, he was ordered to be silent. The Dreyfus case was closed. He refused to follow the orders of the High Command. Picquart worked diligently to reveal the truth, risking his honor, his livelihood, even his life. However, when Esterhazy was brought to trial, the military court exonerated him, despite all the evidence pointing to his guilt. Picquart was then imprisoned for exposing military secrets, and all hope for Alfred Dreyfus seemed lost. But a light emerged from the darkness, and in the process, France became divided against itself in a passionate battle for its very soul. It was Emile Zola, the acclaimed French novelist, who ignited the spark when he penned J'accuse, perhaps the most important letter to the editor ever written. His accusation of a cover-up occupied the entire front page of L'Aurore. Zola declared, "I accuse Minister of War General Mercier of having made himself an accomplice to one of the greatest iniquities of the century. I accuse the handwriting experts of having made lying and fraudulent reports. I accuse the War Office of having carried on in the press an abominable campaign to mislead opinion and to cover up their crime. I accuse the First Court-Martial of having violated the law by condemning an accused person on the strength of a secret document. Let the investigation take place in the open day. Truth is on the march, and nothing can stop it." Zola's pronouncements resounded throughout France and around the world. As a result, Zola was tried for libel in French civil court. His courageous act was met with a judgment of 1 year in prison and a fine of 3,000 francs. He was forced into exile and seek refuge in London. He saw Dreyfus as a symbol representing truth, equality, and justice.
I do not want my country to remain with lies and injustice. One day, France will thank me for having assisted in preserving its honor.
From that moment on, it is said that the Dreyfus case became the Dreyfus affair, fueled in large measure by the Parisian press, at the time the largest, most diverse, and most provocative in the world. New high-speed presses and inexpensive photo printing allowed images to be easily reproduced. In search of political prominence and profit, the press freely manipulated the Dreyfus affair. In this charged atmosphere, prejudice paraded as science, caricature paraded as truth, a distorted face of a stereotype for the Jew was depicted to advance the theory of race superiority. Jews were stigmatized as a negative moral and social force, as exploiters, as thieves, usurers, and sexual deviants. The media proliferation and political implications permeated all levels of French society. The debate over evidence ignited a powder keg of explosive opinions from intellectuals, political leaders, artists, and the everyday man in the street, even dividing families. People around the world came to the defense of Dreyfus and Zola. Active pro-Dreyfusards included Monet, Cassatt, Pissarro, Chekhov, Mark Twain, Sarah Bernhardt, and Henry James. Composer Edvard Grieg refused to tour France. Many took great risks, lost patronage, incurred the wrath of family and friends, and made sacrifices in their expressions of support. American President Theodore Roosevelt:
"We have watched with indignation and regret the trial of Captain Dreyfus based on bitter religious prejudices. You cannot benefit one class by pulling down another."
Among the anti-Dreyfusards were Barrès, Daudet, Renoir, Cézanne, and Degas. They supported the army and its campaign to preserve the honor and security of the fatherland. The public outcry continued, and in June 1899, the United Court of Appeals, bowing to international pressure, granted Dreyfus a retrial. The verdict was again treason, but this time the sentence was reduced to 10 years because of extenuating circumstances. This caused worldwide outrage. 12 days later, Dreyfus was offered a pardon. Due to his deteriorating health, he was urged to accept the pardon by family and friends. Dreyfus accepted the pardon, but vowed to pursue all efforts that would lead to his complete exoneration. Freedom meant nothing to him without his honor. He wanted all of France to know he was innocent. The wheels of justice turned slowly. In 1903, Dreyfus appealed for a retrial based on new evidence. 3 years later, the United Court of Appeals finally exonerated Dreyfus and declared him innocent of all charges. Parliament voted to reinstate Dreyfus as a major. Georges Picquart, who in his quest for truth was dishonorably discharged and imprisoned, was also reinstated and promoted to brigadier general. In 1906, when Georges Clemenceau became Prime Minister of France, Picquart served as his Minister of War. In the presence of family and friends, Dreyfus received the Cross of the Légion d'honneur in the same courtyard at the Ecole militaire in which he had been degraded 12 years earlier. France, before the world, declared Dreyfus innocent. It is terrifying to recall the prophecy of the self-proclaimed Pope of anti-Semitism, Edouard Drumont, who predicted at the end of the 19th century, only 50 years prior to the Holocaust.
The Jews must be blind not to realize what awaits them. They will be taken away as scrap. A leader will suddenly emerge and do whatever pleases him. He will have the right of life and death. He will use any means that suit his purpose. The great organizer who will unite all of our resentments, our anger, and our suffering will achieve a result which will resound throughout the universe. Who is to say he is not already at work?
50 years after Alfred Dreyfus had been unjustly convicted, his granddaughter, Madeleine Lévy, at the age of 22, was murdered in Auschwitz, a tragic victim of Adolf Hitler's final solution for 6 million Jews.
No one should view the Dreyfus affair and the legacy of the Holocaust without reflecting upon the rights of the individual. The abuse of military power, the manipulation of the judicial process, the role of the media, the intellectual, and the responsibility of a critical mass of concerned citizens. Democracy demands vigilance. To quote Robert Jackson, U.S. Chief Prosecutor at the War Crimes Trial at Nuremberg, these heinous acts of the Holocaust have become our shared cultural heritage. The 20th century has culminated in a scientific technology that was government-sanctioned to systematically and efficiently murder a targeted marginal group of innocents. In this last decade of the 20th century, our everyday vocabulary includes such words as genocide, Holocaust, killing fields, and ethnic cleansing. These words conjure images of horrific, horrendous acts of evil, yet we use them so easily, and perhaps through their recurrent use, we diminish their impact.